Okay, number 4, we're going to solve it by completing the square. Part of the problem is already set up for us as far as what we need. We have x squared plus 4x. I'm going to do plus, and I'm going to leave a blank space, and then equals 77. When you complete the square, you want to make sure your leading coefficient is a 1 and that it is positive, which it is already in this case. Once you do that, you want to move that constant to the other side. If this had not been a 1, we would divide out, which you'll see that process later, and factor out that number and divide each term by that, and then we'll have our leading coefficient of a 1. In this case, it's already done. Once that is complete, you take this middle term, you divide it by 2, and then you square it. This is the completing the square part. Alright, so 4 divided by 2 is 2, and then I will do 2 squared. Now what I'm going to do is two things. One side, I'm going to add the 2 squared, because whatever you add to one side of the equal sign, you have to add to the other. So whenever you add that, I'm going to add 2 squared. I'm going to leave it over here because that's going to help me factor later on. So 2 squared. On the other side, 2 squared is equal to 4, so I'm just going to add it as a 4 so I can simplify on that side. So here's a shortcut. Whenever you put it like this, we pick this term in such a way that it always works out to be a perfect square. So you just take the 2 terms with the square on them, x, and then since it's positive, it was positive here, so plus 2, and then you put the square on the outside. So each of the squared terms here. Now if you were to FOIL this, you will see that the 4x is still there. We didn't just ignore it or get rid of it. It's still buried in there, but you just have to FOIL it out to see it. You have to do x plus 2 and then x plus 2, okay, because that's what this means, x plus 2 squared. And then if you FOIL that out, you'll get x squared plus 4x plus 4, which is what that is. On the right side, you simplify, and that will give us 81, okay? And then from here, we can solve the rest of the problem. So to get rid of the square, we're going to take the square root of both sides. That will get rid of the square, so we'll just have x plus 2 equals, now when we do the square root of 81, you got to remember positive or negative, and then the square root of 81 is 9. Alright, so from this point, I will do x plus 2 equals 9, and then x plus 2 equals negative 9, because we have a positive or negative. When I subtract 2, that will give me x equals 7, and then when I subtract 2, x equals negative 11. So 7 and negative 11. Alright, so this one wants us to complete the square as well. However, this one will be a little bit more problematic due to the fact that we have fractions to deal with. But I'm going to try to keep the process the same for all intensive purposes. We have 5z squared plus 9z. I'm going to go ahead and move that 2 over. And then, so that means this, on the other side is going to be a positive 2. Okay, from here, I am going to factor out a 5. Okay. So 5 is coming from here and here, divide by 5. So I have that 5 out here. It's going to leave me with z squared. That's going to give us 9 divided by 5, z, and then plus blank space equals 2. Alright, now my leading term is a 1. I'm going to take this middle term, divide by 2, and square it. So when you have a fraction, when you divide, it really just multiplies the bottom. That's what division is multiplying the bottom. So you can either look at it like this, divided by 2, and then just put 2 over 1 and do keep change flip. When you flip it, it'll be 9 over 5 times 1 over 2. So the end result that's happening, the bottom is getting multiplied by 2. So you get 9 over 10. So you take that middle term, divide by 2, and then square it as we did before. So when I square it, I will square the top and the bottom. Okay. So when you square this, you will get 81 over 100. So these are the two forms I'm looking at using. I'm looking at using 9 over 10 squared, which I'm going to add here. Now, notice I just put this 9 over 10 in parentheses that is also getting distributed when I multiply by 5. So whenever I add it to the other side, I have to take that into account, that whatever number I added here is being multiplied by 5. So that means this number I need to multiply by 5 to figure out what exactly I added to this side exactly, so I can add the same thing to this side. So when you multiply by 5, I just think about reducing. 5 and 100 are both divisible by 5, so that will become 20. So just 81 over 20 is what I actually added. So extra step that doesn't really come out in context, doesn't happen all the time, but it does here. So be careful when you have that coefficient. From here, we're going to factor. Leave the 5 out. The two terms with squareds will go in parentheses together, so that is z, since it was positive, plus 9 over 10, and then the square on the outside, equals, we're going to get a common denominator between these. So think about this as 2 over 1, and multiply top and bottom by 20. So that will give me 20, or 20 times 2 would give me 40 actually. 40 plus 81 over 20. Okay. Continuing, we will have 5z plus 9 over 10 squared, and this is equal to 121 over 20. And then we're going to divide by 5, which is going to multiply this bottom number whenever I divide by 5. So that will give me z plus 9/10 in parentheses squared equals 121 over 100. Where did this 100 come from? Well, when you divide by 5 on both sides, think about that same thing we just talked about up here. Keep, change, flip. It's only going to multiply that bottom number, not both. So that's how we get the 120 times 5, because that's the end result. All right, this is what we end up with. From here, we will take the square root of both sides. That will get rid of the square here, so we will have z plus 9 over 10 equals positive or negative. Take the square root of both the top and the bottom. That will give us 11 over 10. So final step, we will subtract 9 over 10 and move it over. Or actually, let me just write it separate. Z plus 9 over 10 equals positive 11 over 10. And then Z plus 9 over 10 equals negative 11 over 10. So you subtract the 9, and that will give you 2 over 10. And negative 20 over 10, which is 2. This reduces to 1/5.